UDA Sukuma imefika watu 90,000.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Dokiza TV channel. Our podcast today is a critical analysis on the scheduled November 27th by-elections for 23 elective areas. They include 1 senatorial seat, 6 constituencies, and 16 wards for MCA elections. For almost 2 years, Kenya's political scene has been in a kind of weird holding pattern. We've had all this political energy, all these vacant seats, but no one to officially referee the game. That's because we haven't had a fully constituted Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC. But now, the new IEBC team is in place, and they've thrown the switch. The game is back on. On November 27th, Kenyans in several areas will be heading to the polls in a series of by-elections that are way more significant than they might seem. This isn't just about filling a few empty seats. This is the first major national political battle since the 2022 general election. It's a midterm exam for the Kenya Kwanza government, a survival test for the emerging opposition alliance, and a crucial gauge of the public mood, especially for the young people who shook the country in mid-2025 and 2025. In total, 23 seats are up for grabs, 1 Senate, 6 parliamentary, and 16 ward seats, scattered in different parts of country, in fact about 13 counties. This is bound to make by-election outcomes even more significant. At this juncture, let's zoom in on the real battleground, the county of Baringo and the 6 constituencies for members of the National Assembly. These are the races that will tell us where the wind is blowing. First, let's set the stage. Why have these seats been vacant? It's a mix of tragedy and political calculus. In Baringo, we lost Senator Cheptemo, and the county will be voting to replace him. But for the MPs, it's different. Some seats, like Kasipol, are vacant due to the death of the sitting MP. But others, like Mbia North and Aganja, are vacant because the sitting MPs, Ruku and Wandai, were appointed to cabinet positions by President Ruto. Now, that's interesting. President Ruto appointing ODM's Opiyo Wandayi to his cabinet. That's a direct result of the political handshake or rapprochement between Ruto and Raila Odinga. So, in a way, these by-elections are also a test of whether that political truce at the top translates to support on the ground, or if it's confused and angered the base. So, let's break down the key constituencies and what they mean for the major parties. Starting with Aganja constituency. This is ODM leader Raila Odinga's backyard. It's in Siaya County, deep in Azimio territory. The seat is vacant because their MP, Opiyo Wandayi, who was also the majority leader in the National Assembly, got a cabinet job. The seat is vacant because their MP, Opiyo Wandayi, who was also the minority leader in the National Assembly, got a cabinet job. On paper, this should be a straightforward retain for ODM. But here's the critical question, will voters be happy that their MP got a prestigious job in a Ruto government, or will they see it as a betrayal and stay home? Voter turnout here will be a huge story. If ODM wins but with a shockingly low number, it's a sign that the base is demoralized by the cooperation with Ruto. If Kenya Kwanza even fields a strong candidate and makes it competitive, that will be unsettling to ODM leadership, since it is in the broad-based government. Then we go to Mbia North. This is the opposite. This is Kenya Kwanza territory. The MP, Jeffrey Ruku, was appointed to cabinet by his own party boss, President Ruto. So you'd expect the ruling coalition to easily retain this seat, right? Well, it's never that simple. The analysis notes that the area has a history with multiple parties, DP, Jubilee, even PNU. This is a test of whether Kenya Kwanza has successfully united these factions under one banner, or if old rivalries will flare up and split the vote. This is a must-win for Ruto. A loss here would be a seismic shock, indicating deep internal problems within his coalition. Now, let's talk about the real fight clubs, the constituencies where it's going to be a bare-knuckle brawl. Maleva constituency is going to be a political circus, and everyone's got a ringmaster. Consider these factors: the Mudavadi factor, the Malala factor, the Natembeya and Wamalwa factor. What does that mean? It means that this isn't just ODM versus UDA. This is a proxy war for supremacy among ODM, UDA, DAP Kenya, and DCP. Prime CS Musalia Mudavadi will want to show he still calls the shots in the region. His rival, Cleophas Malala, will want to prove his own strength. Meanwhile, governors like Natembeya and Wamalwa might also want to influence the outcome to build their own national profiles. This race is less about party and more about individual political muscle. It's messy, it's personal, and it will be incredibly revealing about who actually holds power in Western Kenya. Then there's Kasipul constituency. This is an ODM zone, but the seat is vacant after the death of their MP. Normally, this would be an ODM affair. But the analysis hints at a hot contest and show of might among different interests, name-checking ODM's Gladys Wanga, the governor of Homa Bay. This suggests that even within ODM, there are fierce internal battles over who gets to control the party's ticket and influence. If ODM struggles to hold this seat because of internal divisions, it's a bad sign for their cohesion ahead of 2027. Magarini constituency presents a fascinating new experiment. This is the backyard of Kilifi governor and ODM stalwart, Amason Kingi. But Kingi is now the Senate Speaker, working within Ruto's government. The analysis points to an expected ODM-UDA alliance to lock out other parties. Think about that. The former opposition party and the ruling party joining forces. This is a direct outcome of the new political realities. If this alliance works and wins comfortably, it could be a blueprint for future cooperation in the coastal region. But if it fails, it will show the limits of leaders making deals at the top without carrying the voters along. Finally, Banisa constituency in Garissa will be a critical test for Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua's influence in the larger Upper Eastern and Northern Kenya region. Kenya Kwanza will be desperate to make inroads here against ODM and perhaps other local parties. So, what does all this mean for the big parties? For Kenya Kwanza, this is a referendum on their first 2 years in power. The high cost of living and plight of jobless youth are still the #1 issues. Can they convince their own supporters in Mbeya North to come out and vote for them despite economic hardships? Can they project strength and unity in Maleva? Their goal is to hold their fort and maybe steal 1 or 2 seats from the opposition parties to show they are expanding. The scheduled elections for the 16 wards will also be significant. These wards are scattered in about 13 counties. By virtue of being grassroots seats, their outcomes would be significant in terms of reflecting growing or declining popularity of different political factions. For ODM, this is a test of relevance. After the Gen Z protests, which they arguably tried to latch onto, can they still mobilize their base? Can they get people to vote in Nganja when their MP is in Ruto's government? Their goal is to defend all their seats, especially Nganja and Kasipul, with high turnouts to prove they are still a potent political force. Can they convince their own supporters in Mbeya North to come out and vote for them despite economic hardships? Can they project strength and unity in Maleva? Their goal is to hold their fort and maybe steal 1 or 2 seats from the opposition parties to show they are expanding. The scheduled elections for the 16 wards will also be significant. These wards are scattered in about 13 counties. By virtue of being grassroots seats, their outcomes would be significant in terms of reflecting growing or declining popularity of different political factions. For ODM, this is a test of relevance. After the Gen Z protests, which they arguably tried to latch onto, can they still mobilize their base? Can they get people to vote in Nganja when their MP is in Ruto's government? Their goal is to defend all their seats, especially Nganja and Kasipul, with high turnouts to prove they are still a potent political force. But the biggest wildcard in all of this? The youth. For nearly 2 years, we haven't had an election. In that time, Gen Z and millennials have fundamentally reshaped Kenyan politics through peaceful, leaderless protests. They rejected the entire political class and demanded change. Now, the system is asking them to come back and participate in that very system. How will they respond? Will they see these by-elections as another pointless game for the old politicians? Or will they see it as an opportunity to flex their newfound power and influence outcomes from within? The level of youth participation will be the most critical metric to watch. A low youth turnout means disillusionment and a return to business as usual for the political titans. A high, informed youth turnout, where they vote based on issues and not tribal alignment, could send a shockwave through every party headquarters in the country. It could force politicians to actually talk about policies, about jobs, about corruption, instead of the usual empty rhetoric. So, mark your calendars for November 27th. It might just be a bunch of small elections in a few places, but it's the first real battle in the long war leading to 2027. It's our first chance to see if the lessons of the protests were learned, and if the political landscape has truly changed, or if it's just the same old battle of the titans on a slightly smaller field. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you paying attention to these by-elections? Do they even matter? And most importantly, will you be voting if you're in one of these areas? Clear, conversational breakdowns of Kenyan politics. See you in the next one.